The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Teach Them to Fly, How Storytelling Gives Wings to Primary Age Children with Disabilities. I'm Lisa D'Amico, your moderator and webinar organizer. Today's webinar is part of a monthly series that comes out of the Office of VSA and Accessibility at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. This series addresses topics related to arts, disability, and education. If you would like to view live stream captioning of this webinar, you can follow the link you see on the screen and in the chat box of the control panel located on the right side of your screen. Before we get started, let's take a moment to make sure that you're familiar with the Gotowebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. This control panel can be hidden by clicking on the orange arrow in the top left corner. If you need to leave the webinar early, you can exit out of the program by clicking on the X in the upper right corner. A recording of the webinar will be available afterwards, so you can catch up on any parts you miss. Make sure you've selected telephone or mic and speakers to correspond with how you're connected to the webinar. You have the ability to submit or answer questions, which is especially encouraged in this webinar, using the chat pane located near the bottom of the control panel. If you would prefer to say the question instead of typing it, you can click on the raise your hand icon on the control panel and I will unmute your microphone. Your questions will come directly to me, and during the designated question and answer time, as well as the interactive storytelling time that we'll have in this webinar, at the end of the presentation, and then I'll relay them to our presenter. I want to emphasize that following the presentation, I will send out a follow-up email with a link to the recording of today's presentation, a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, and any handouts that our presenter has prepared, as well as a copy of the transcript. This means you don't need to worry about frantically taking notes during the presentation. You can always go back and watch the recording and review the supplemental materials. I'd also like to let you know about next month's webinar, The Art of Self-Expression, Textures, Tools, Techniques, and Thinking Outside of the Box, for our visual artists out there, our visual teaching artists, that would take place Tuesday, June 23rd from 3 to 4 p.m. Washington, D.C. time with Lisa Bartoli. If you're active in social media, I invite you to connect with us using the hashtag VSAWebinar, on Facebook at VSA International, on Twitter at VSAINTL, and Instagram at VSA International. And with that, I will turn it over to today's presenter, Cheri Norfolk. All right, Cheri, I'm going to have you share your screen.
Do you have it?
I just sent it to you now.
Okay.
And there we go. Ready when you are.
All right. Teach them to fly. One of my favorite quotes is, "There are only two lasting bequests we can hope to give our children. One of these is roots, the other wings." I take this quote as a special challenge to myself every day when I go into the classroom. I want to give children wings. I've been a storytelling teaching artist for almost 20 years, working mostly with young audiences of Atlanta, the Georgia Council for the Arts, Springboard Young Audiences of St. Louis, Tennessee Arts Commission, the Mississippi Arts Commission, but also with schools across the country and in Southeast Asia. My passion is using storytelling to increase learning. I'm really privileged that I get to work in inclusive and self-contained classrooms all over the country. In this picture, you will see children from a kindergarten self-contained classroom. They're telling a story together. My mission is to give children with special needs their wings, and storytelling can help accomplish that goal. In this picture, Mila is telling a story and flapping her wings. In this session, we'll explore storytelling strategies that authentically address the Common Core state standards for English language arts in the primary grades. We'll learn a story that you can immediately take into the classroom, And most importantly, discover how storytelling can help children with special needs learn to fly. Storytelling works. Research indicates a close correspondence between language development and cognitive processes and the need for integration if children are to achieve their cognitive potential. There's a special process that they're talking about here, but what I'm thinking is that storytelling, that is clearly narrating and acting out a story, serves this very same purpose and helps to achieve the same goals. So, what I want to be clear about, this is not about me as a storyteller. This is about how storytelling works in the classroom. When storytelling enters the classroom, it is a power tool for learning. Storytelling provides multiple opportunities for engagement, representation, and expression. In this picture, you can see this little girl is expressively telling her story, and she has engaged her audience. In storytelling, language is layered on top of sensory experience and physical activity, allowing learners to store, access, and exhibit understanding of information in multiple modalities. This little girl and her friends are acting out the story Anansi and the Moss-Covered Rock. In the background, you see the background setting that they have created. So they have developed the sensory experiences. They are acting out the story, and they are going to remember this story for a long, long time. Students connect with stories as active listeners, writers, performers, and collaborators, exploring a wide variety of options for learning and retelling and creating and presenting narratives. These pictures show children doing just that. In the top picture, you see more children still acting out Anansi and the Moss-Covered Rock. But I wanted you to also see the audience is not just sitting there. They are collaborating. They have rhythm and instruments, and they're actually creating the sound effects for the story. In the bottom picture is a group of children from a self-contained classroom acting out a story with their teacher. They are definitely having a joyful experience. So I'm going to take you through a lesson plan that I use in primary special needs classrooms, in self-contained classrooms, also in inclusive classrooms. In this lesson plan, the very first thing we're going to do is hear a story. So you might want to enlarge your webcam image because I'm going to be using gestures and facial expression that are pretty much important to the story. While you're increasing the webcam size, I just wanted to mention that this lesson plan and the full text of the story, plus everything about the standards we're meeting and everything, are in the handout that you will receive later. So again, you don't have to take notes. This is a story I call Too Noisy. It's an adaptation of a Yiddish folk tale. Once upon a time, there was a farmer who said, "My farm is too noisy because the dog barked, woof, 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 and the cat meowed, meow, and the baby cried. My farm is too noisy," said the farmer. "I'm going to see the wise man." Off he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He knocked on the door. Boom, boom, boom. The door opened. Yes? What do you want? "My farm is too noisy," said the farmer. "Go back," said the wise man. "Put some cows in the farm with you." "What?" "Some cows." "All right." Back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He put some cows on the farm, and the cows mooed. Moo. And the dog still barked. Woof, woof, woof. And the cat still meowed. Meow. And the baby still cried. "My My farm is too noisy, said the farmer. I'm going to see the wise man. Off he went, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He knocked on the door, boom, boom, boom. The door opened. Squeak. Yes, what do you want? My farm is too noisy. Go back, said the wise man. Put some chickens on the farm with you. What? Some chickens. All right. Back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He put some chickens on the farm and they clapped. And the cow still mooed. Moo. And the dog still barked. Woof, woof, woof. And the cat meowed. Meow. And the baby still cried. My farm is too noisy, said the farmer. I'm going to see the wise man. Back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. Boom, boom, boom. Yes, what do you want? My farm is too noisy. Go back, said the wise man. Put some ducks on the farm with you. What? Some ducks. All right, back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He put some ducks on the farm and they quacked. And the chickens clucked. And the cows mooed. Moo. And the dog still barked. Woof, woof, woof. And the cat still meowed. Meow. And the baby still cried. My farm is too noisy. I'm going to see the wise man. Back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. Boom, boom, boom. Squeak. Yes, what do you want? My farm is too noisy. Go back, said the wise man. Take out the cows. Take out the chickens. Take out the ducks. All right. Back he went. Stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp. He sent away the cows. Moo. He sent away the chickens. He sent away the ducks. And the dog still barked. Woof, woof, woof. And the cat still meowed. Meow. And the baby went to sleep. Ah, said the farmer. Oh, said the farmer, my farm sounds just right. And he lived happily ever after. Now, as you can see, there's lots of action, lots of sounds in that story. And I wanted you to see a little video clip of a special needs self-contained classroom listening to that story. Now, as they listen to the story, they become really engaged. These kids, when I first went in there, were a mess. It was a hot mess in that classroom. They were all over the place. They sat down, and I want you just to see how they begin to engage. Now, this is a silent video, but you can watch them start to engage and re-engage through the first clip of the story. These kids are kindergarten through third grade students with various pre-vocational, behavioral, academic, and social needs. And they have fun with this story. Watch. Not yet. They're not engaged. And now the kinesthetic children are starting to become involved. Dogs barking, cats meowing. This is really going slow. Sorry about that. And in a minute, you'll see the baby starts to cry. That's when all of them become 100% engaged. There they go. They like to cry. What happens within the story is that the children their attention will start to wander. They have attention deficits, but immediately the sounds or the action or something in the story will pull them back over and over again. So storytellers can engage learners with expressive character voices, facial expression, sound effects, meaningful gestures, and body language. We have the opportunity to keep them involved and engaged. The visual learners watch the gestures and the body language and the facial expression. And you'll often think that they're not paying attention because they seem to just be staring. But they are getting the story, they're processing the story through the visuals that you're giving them. The kinesthetic learners mirror the actions and the expressions of the storyteller. In this picture, you can see the audience is doing exactly what I'm doing on stage. Auditory learners mimic character voices, vocal expression, and sound effects, and they have a really good time. Now, in this lesson, I don't want children just to hear a story. I want them to learn the story and to be able to retell the story. Story learning and retelling are facilitated by breaking the process into small steps, modeling each part of the process, exploring patterns in the story, and layering language on top of sensory experiences and physical activity with lots and lots and lots and lots of repetition. We take it step by step. I've already told the story, hopefully with expressive voice and obviously repetitive actions and sound effects. Now the next thing is we're going to review it orally, kinesthetically, linguistically, logically, and visually. The kinesthetic and visual review I do with the kids, and you might want to do this wherever you are. We're going to do just the beginning of it, just with our hands. The visual learners watch and review the story in their minds. The kinesthetic learners are doing it with me. The linguistic learners are reviewing the story linguistically in their minds as we're doing that. So we go through the whole thing that way. And then we're going to review the story sequentially and linguistically. Imprinting print. Whether or not the children can read, I still want to imprint print. I want them to see the correlation between the printed word, the written word, and the words that we've been using. I also want to review the different elements of the story. So I would ask them these questions. What is the setting? And they will tell me either house or farm for this story. Who is the main character? The farmer. What is the problem? No one ever has an issue with this. They know it's too noisy. And there are three things making noise. There's the dog, the cat, and the baby. They attempt to solve the problem. The farmer goes to the wise man who says to add three more things, the cows, the chickens, and the ducks. But the problem hasn't been solved yet. The problem isn't solved until the wise man says to take out the cows and the chickens and the ducks. And then the conclusion is the dog still barks, the cat still meows, the baby is asleep, and they live happily ever after. Now we're going to explore the pattern. We're going to review how many noises are in the beginning. There were the three noises. How many are added? 3. How does the problem get solved? The final 3 have been removed. That's the pattern of this story. We could also review the story non-linguistically with 3D props, puppets, or picture cards. I have a picture here of some 3D props that help children who maybe have visual impairments to process the story. Children who aren't able to move very much or don't use language can point to the pictures on the picture cards of the farmer, the cow, the horse, the pig, or they could use the finger puppets to show what is next. They can demonstrate their understanding of the story that way. The next thing, though, is I want the children to work together to dramatize the story. They're going to embody the story. Now, I have, with this group, I had already, we chose who was going to do what. We didn't have a whole lot of kids in the group, so I had to be one of the characters. I want you to see just the ending of it so you can see that these kids really did get it. Now, I should tell you that I had not met these children before, hadn't even really gotten to observe them except that few minutes before I started, where, as I said, we were in chaos. But they got the story. Now we're going to be joining the story right at the end where the farmer has returned to the wise man for the final time. Again, you won't hear the video, but you'll be able to tell that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. The boy standing is the farmer. The boy who is sort of on the chair is the wise man. And the rest of us on the floor are the various animals. Here we go.
He was back to the wise man.
Go back. Take them out. The baby's asleep and he's going to fall over in a minute. There he goes. Happily ever after. They've got wings. They're very proud of themselves. Okay, we've learned the story. We've retold the story. The next thing I want to do is to create a new story using that pattern. And the group's going to do this together. Group story creation is facilitated by establishing familiarity with a folktale framework. We have done that. We've looked at the pattern. We've used the pattern to tell the story. Connecting to prior knowledge to generate new settings, characters, problems, and solutions, and modeling results. This process allows for cross-curricular applications. So we're going to create a story together right now. First, we need a new setting. Now, this can be someplace the students are familiar with, for instance, the zoo, or the classroom, or the playground, or a place that's relevant to a current unit of study, like a rainforest, or the garden, or the ocean. When I did this with the boys in the video, they chose a haunted house. Often around holidays, they will choose like the North Pole. But right now, I would like to hear from you. What setting should we choose?
So this is Lisa. That means that you're going to type into that chat pane what your answer is, what settings you suggest. Oh, I've heard zoo, and we got a lot of ones coming in. Zoo, African village, tropical island, circus, ocean, swimming pool, Mars, shopping center,
Mars. Um,
an igloo, an apartment in the city. You got a lot of options.
okay. So I think I'll just go with the zoo.
Okay.
And now, so I'm writing that down. Our setting's going to be the zoo. Next, we're going to use the pattern of the story, and drawing on prior knowledge, students answer the questions. Who thinks it's too noisy at the zoo? Who should our main character be?
Zookeeper, elephant, mommy, the monkeys, sloth, a child,
Oh,
pig,
it's sloth.
lion
That's a good
tamer,
one. I'm
penguin.
going with the sloth.
I think you've got everybody excited, Cheri. A bat.
Now, this is kind of like working with the kids. I get 1,000 ideas. And I should say that the kids give me lots and lots of ideas, and we vote. This is about learning how to evaluate, to use some critical thinking. We vote on what we think would be the best main character. Now, some of the ideas that you came up with may be now used here, because we now need to have 3 characters or things that are making noise. And we also need to know what sounds they make.
Lion, zoo visitors, monkeys, ooh ooh ee, monkey, oh, grandma sneezes, camel bleats, oh, lion roar.
What sound does a visitor make?
We had a belch, laughter,
Or what?
wow, screams, yells, wow, look at that, visitor crunching popcorn, where's the bathroom, achoo,
Okay.
blah
I'll
blah,
go with wow.
hey look.
All right, thanks. I'll go with wow. Now, if I'm doing this with kids, I would ask them not only what the sound is, but I would ask them to help me spell it. So we're using at least the beginning sounds of words. If they can't do anything further, that's okay, but at least to give me the beginning letters of the words. So we are in print and print, and we are thinking about phonemic sounds and spelling. The next question is, who is the wise one in the story? Who does the sloth go to for help?
The owl, the cheetah, the tortoise.
Okay, the cheetah. And now we're going to need 3 more characters or things that the wise one will add, and we need to know what sounds they make.
Was it elephant, koala bear, snake
And the
hiss,
sounds.
donkey,
Okay, donkey at the zoo.
apparently, a llama, popping balloons, an elephant horn sound,
Okay.
a gibbon that hoots, or an eagle shriek.
Okay. And you said, did you say snake at one point?
We had a snake that hisses.
Okay. So we have now, you didn't get to vote. Sorry about that. So here are the selections that I made. The setting's going to be the zoo. The main character will be the sloth. The 3 animals making, or the 3 noisy things in the beginning of the story are the lion's roar, the visitors saying wow, the monkey is saying oh, ah, 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 ah. The sloth will go to the cheetah, who tells him to add the elephant the gibbon, and the snake, and then of course they'll all be taken out. Now, the kids have now, or you, have now composed a new story using the pattern of the old story. And now I'm going to model the resulting story to the group so they can see how we can go from a bare bones outline that just has setting, characters, sequence, problem, solution, and conclusion, just the bare bones, to a full-fledged story. So again, if you want to, you can enlarge your webcam, and let's see what happens with the story. Once upon a time, there was a zoo, and in that zoo, there was a sloth who said, "Oh, my zoo is too noisy," because the lion roared, and the visitors yelled, "Wow!" and the monkeys chattered, "Oh, my zoo is too noisy. I'm gonna go talk to the cheetah." Off he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. "Hey, my zoo is too noisy."
"Wow, I don't tell you what to do. I don't tell you what to do. Go put some elephants in the zoo with you."
All right. Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. He put some elephants in the zoo, and they trumpeted. And the lion still roared. And the visitors still yelled, "Wow!" And the monkey still chattered. "Oh, my zoo is too noisy. I'm going to talk to the cheetah." Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. "Hey, my zoo is too noisy."
"I don't tell you what to do. I don't tell you what to do. Put some gibbons in the zoo with you."
"Oh, all right." Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. He put some gibbons in the zoo, and they hooted, "Oh, oh, 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 oh." And the elephants trumpeted, and the lion roared, and the visitors yelled, "Wow!" and the monkeys chattered, "Oh man, my zoo is too noisy. I'm gonna go talk to the wise man." The cheetah, back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. "Hey, my zoo is too noisy."
"I don't tell you what to do. I don't tell you what to do. Put some snakes in the zoo with you."
All right. Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. He put snakes in the zoo, and they hissed. And the gibbon hooted, and the elephant trumpeted, and the lion roared, and the visitors yelled, "Wow!" and the monkeys chattered, "It's too noisy. Oh, I'm gonna go talk to the cheetah." Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. "I told you it's too noisy."
"I don't tell you what to do. I don't tell you what to do. Take out the elephant. Take out the gibbon. Take out the snakes."
All right. Back he went, da-dum, 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 da-dum. He took out the elephant. He took out the gibbon. He took out the snakes. The lion still roared. The visitors still yelled. and the monkey still chattered. Oh, my zoo sounds just right. And he slept happily ever after. You guys wrote a great story. The next step would be, now that the children have heard their story and they've seen the actions they can use and they participated in the telling of that story, now they're going to create a collaborative dramatization like the kids are doing in the picture here. Now, one thing I should mention, I said that this can be cross-curricular. You can apply this to anything you're studying, really. In math, you can write math sentences. So you had 3 elephants, 2 gibbons, 1 cheetah. If you take away 1 cheetah, how many animals are left? If you add 4 giraffes, how many animals do you have now? So you can do math problems with it. In social studies, you could set it in a particular place. You could do it in the community with community helpers. You can put it in an African village and talk about the different kinds of people and who would be there and perhaps what animals might be in the area. In science, you can look at habitats and talk about the different habitats and what animals are in a particular habitat. So you can draw on prior knowledge and enforce that knowledge by having them create a story. Students can demonstrate their knowledge and understanding through lots of modalities when they're doing storytelling. They can use creative drama, as we've been doing. They can use props, they can use puppets, they can do individual retelling of the story, and some of those kids are really going to be able and ready to do that. If they don't have language, they could draw the story. They could write the story. They can represent that story in any way they want to that works for them. Storytelling authentically addresses the Common Core state standards for English language arts and/or the language arts standards implemented in any state or region. And storytelling addresses national core arts anchor standards such as creating, performing, responding, and connecting. We've done that all in this lesson plan. And by the way, I just want to remind you, the standards that were addressed in this lesson are in the handout that you're going to get. Storytelling also addresses the 21st century skills, creativity. They created a story, and they were creative in the ways that they told the story. Communication. They communicated their story. They collaborated in creating that story, and they used critical thinking in developing the storyline. Storytelling also employs the 4 effective teaching components: modeling, small steps, it's multimodal, and it provides lots of clues to facilitate recall. All of the actions, the sounds, that helps the kids remember what comes next. Storytelling addresses the integration of the left and the right side of the brain, the development of the corpus callosum. As children listen to stories, they are processing the words and the sequence of the story on the left side. They are visualizing the story on the right side, and the 2 sides have to communicate in order for them to understand the story. They're using all ways of knowing. They're definitely linguistic. There's lots and lots of words here. The linguistic, the acquisition of vocabulary is really, really easy through storytelling. In fact, storytelling is considered the 2nd most powerful way to acquire vocabulary, because when children encounter new vocabulary in story, they hear it in context. They hear the sound of the voice, the look on the face, the gestures that give it meaning. So they're getting vocabulary. It's mathematical in that it has a very specific pattern to the story. It is spatial. They're visualizing the story. They're also acting out the story and moving from place to place, as you saw in the video, when they were moving around to retell the story. It's musical. in this particular story, and in most of the stories that I use with young children, there's a rhythm to the story. And the stompy stomp, stompy stomp, stompy stomp, they're making their own rhythm. It's interpersonal, lots of collaboration, and intrapersonal, and that the children get to decide what is going to work for them. Do they want to be a dog? Do they want to be a cat? Do they want to be the farmer? So they get to make those decisions. They're never forced on them. They get to make the decisions. And of course, it addresses all learning styles. It's visual, kinesthetic, and auditory. In conclusion, storytelling is multimodal. It provides natural options for engagement, representation, and expression. Storytelling experiences involve students in activities that improve artistic performing skills, increase academic achievement and intellectual development, and encourage social and emotional growth through collaboration and cooperation. And most importantly, storytelling helps give children wings.
Take a bow. Excellent.
They were told to line up to take a bow, so they got the circle. There are only two lasting bequests we can hope to give our children. One of these is roots, the other is wings. And now I'm ready for any questions.
All right. We've had a couple that have come in so far. What if the kids or the teacher doesn't know what an animal looks, sounds, or acts like? Do you use support materials like a sound Bible?
I think I must be the sound Bible. I make it up myself. I tell them. So if they say, what does a cheetah sound like? He snarls. So I'm the sound Bible. And if they don't know what it looks like, we can look it up. We can go to a book. Usually if they come up with an animal that they don't know what it looks like, that's rare. If they come up with an animal that they don't know what it looks like. But if they don't, then we can look it up.
Can you explain corpus callosum?
Corpus callosum?
Callosum, excuse me.
Yeah, it's the connecting. It's the way the left and the right side of the brain connect. It's the only communication between the left and the right side of the brain. It's developed mostly before the age of 4. It develops when both sides of the brain are working together. Anything that you do that crosses the median, that crosses the middle part of the body, will help develop the corpus callosum. So when you're doing actions, finger plays, that helps. Anything like crawling, where you're using both sides of the brain, or both sides of the body, therefore both sides of the brain, helps to develop the corpus callosum. And storytelling, singing, things like that are really, really good because it requires both sides of the brain, and therefore it's building and maintaining the corpus callosum.
Thank you. One of our participants, Linda, has said, thank you so much. Great ideas and so useful for me as a music educator. I'll be applying the Yiddish story this fall with my students, having them create songs for each character in the story. Do you have a source for the Yiddish story?
Well, that's in lots and lots of different versions. And of course, right now, my whole brain is going completely blank. I can email. If you will email me that question, and my email address is on the handout, email me that question. I will be happy to send you 3 or 4 sources for that story. And you also are getting the text of the story in the handout.
And do you give us permission to use this lesson ourselves?
Absolutely. Yes. Take it. Use it. Play with it. Improve on it. It's yours.
And we've had a couple of participants who have asked what other stories are good with this type of program, or have you used other stories in this manner?
I use lots and lots of stories in this manner. One story that works really, really well is The Great Big Enormous Turnip. I'm trying to think, it's maybe a Yugoslavian folktale. I've also seen it listed as a Russian folktale. It's a very, very simple story where an old man wants a turnip, so he plants the seed, it grows, and it turns into a great big enormous turnip. And he tries to pull it out, but it won't come out, so he gets the old woman, they pull it together, it won't come out. She gets the little boy gets the little girl gets the dog gets the cat gets the mouse. And the mouse says, but I'm too little. But the mouse tries anyway, and when they pull, the turnip pops up out of the ground, and they wash it, and they chop it, and they cook it, and they eat it, and then they live happily ever after. That's a sequence of 7. You can easily act that out. In fact, I think one of the pictures that I showed you was of a group of children with special needs acting out that story. And it's a really, really popular one. That's another one that you can take the pattern of the story and make up new stories with new settings and new characters with the same problem, that they need to pull something up out of the ground or off the ground. I also use, I call it Grandmother Spider. It's a Cherokee folktale a lot. It's a story about, in the beginning there was no light. The bear knew that there was light on the other side of the world, so he asked for volunteers, and the buzzard went first. The buzzard took the light but put it on his head to carry it back, and it burnt off all of the feathers, and that's why buzzards are bald. Then the possum went, and she put the light on her tail, and that's why possums have naked tails. And then finally Grandmother Spider said she would try, and they laughed at her and said she was too little, too old, too forgetful, wouldn't remember her way back, and she said, well, I reckon you better let me try. So she went, but she had a plan, and she wove a web to the other side of the world. She scooped up some cold, wet mud. She took the light and put it in the mud to carry back, and followed her web back across the world. On the way, the light baked the mud until it was firm and solid. It became the very first bowl in the whole world, and the light was still safely inside. So she took the light and threw it up into the sky. Now, ever since that day, buzzards have had bald heads, possums have had naked tails, spiders have spun their webs in the shape of the sun, people have used bowls to carry things, and there has been light. That one can be acted by groups of 4 or 5 kids in a group, and it's a marvelous story to work with. And again, you can use the pattern of that story to make up 1,000 new stories.
It's very fun.
I'd be happy to send I could be happy to send the text of those stories, the lesson plans. Just email me and I'll send them to you.
Oh, wonderful. It's a great resource. So this question comes from Kathy. What if you're working with a group of children with autism? How might you adapt some of the activities?
Believe it or not, children with autism have done all of these lesson plans I just told you about. They've worked with them very well. A lot of the time it has to do with letting them choose how they want to interact with the story. I found that in the story Too Noisy, the autistic children really love to be the wise man, because they are then in control of the way the story moves. They can make sure that the order is exactly the right order. There's no touching in this particular story, so it doesn't have to be adapted that way. If the autistic child has a real sensitivity to noise, they can wear earphones. They will often do that to reduce the noise level, so it's not such a problem for them. With the turnip story, there's pulling. Often the autistic child would then choose to be the turnip, and they don't have to be touched. I allow children to make their own decisions about how they interact with the story, they can usually find a way that works for them. And they don't have to make sounds if they don't want to. They don't have to be touched if they don't want to. Or they can use picture cards or something to tell the story that way if they don't want to interact with the other children. Oh, and also I've noticed that If it requires interaction, like with older kids, third, fourth, and fifth graders in special needs classroom, I've often used the story of Coyote and Raven. It's only got 2 characters in it, and when we act that out, the autistic children will act it out with me. I'll be the coyote or I'll be the raven, and they'll act it out with me. If they won't interact with the other children in the class, they will do it with me. So it's those kind of adaptations, allowing them to work in a way that's comfortable for them, that makes it that will make it successful.
Great. Elizabeth says, I've once told a story that was like the spider, and a young student, maybe 4th grade, maybe 4 years old, said, that's not true, and he was right. How do you handle that situation?
I introduced that story by saying this is a story that nobody ever really believed. And that really helps, that this is a story that people didn't believe, but they needed to find a way to explain things. So they made up stories to answer the questions. It was early science. But I'd say, it's a story. It's not true. And putting that out there right up front helps kids get over that hump of, well, how can that be true? But also, animals don't talk. So, and usually when one kid comes up with a question like that or with a comment like that's not true, the other ones will usually answer for you. They'll say things like, it's a story. Well, the animals can't talk either. And you don't really have to say very much. But learning to say ahead of time, this story, nobody really believed this story, but they like to tell it, and then immediately they accept it, they move on.
All right. Thank you. This is from Ariana. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to watch you teach over video. How do you alter it for students that have difficulty with movement?
Oh, that's when they can use props. They can use the finger puppets if they can move their fingers. They can point to the pictures on the cards if they can't move. They could be and too noisy. Let's see. They could be the wise man, because the wise man doesn't have to move. The wise man sits in one place, doesn't move. In the story of Grandmother Spider, they could be the bear, because the bear doesn't have to move. In the turnip, they could be the turnip. I actually had a child who had no arms or legs, and he chose to be the turnip. I would never, ever have asked him to be the turnip, but he wanted to be the turnip, and he was absolutely delighted when at the end of the story the teacher picked him up as if he were coming up out of the ground, and that kid giggled and giggled. You can always find ways to make it work, and a lot of the times the children themselves will suggest the kinds of adaptations that work the best for them.
We're getting a lot of different sort of adaptation questions. Have you adapted too much noise for ESL students, English as a Second Language students?
It doesn't have to be adapted very much. Yeah, they understand it, they like it. They will sometimes make different sounds, and they will give us the sounds that maybe would be used in China or might be used in Spanish. So we can add those different sounds in, but it's never been an issue at all. ESL kids love that story. I think because they can just participate by making sounds. They don't have to have a whole lot of language to tell the story, so making the sounds, they're very successful.
And that question came from Lynette, who also added, there's a picture book called Too Much Noise by Anne McGovern.
Thank you, Lenny. That's the one I couldn't remember.
Well, I think that does it for the audience questions. We've had some really good ones today. I know, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching and listening to the storytelling.
Well, I want to reiterate that if you have questions that are specific to you, if it's maybe for older kids or a specific adaptation, please email me. I'd be very, very happy to respond. Also, if you want the text of those stories that I talked about, or any other ideas, please email me or just to say hi. One of the things about being a teaching artist that I love is being available and sharing. So please do get in touch.
And I think Callie speaks for all of us when she says that your improv storytelling sounds and gestures were amazing.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
practice a lot.
That helps. All right. Well, I'm going to take back control of the screen and launch my survey. All right. So I'd like to ask you, our webinar participants, to stay on the webinar for just a moment longer and complete a short evaluation survey that opens when you close the window. I read through all of your answers. I share them with our participants to give them some feedback because, you know, this webinar was particularly interactive, but sometimes when there's not as much participation, they don't know, you know, is anyone out there? Did they like what I was doing? How can I make it better? I'm also getting ready to plan and put out a call for next season's webinars. So one of those questions is, do you have any webinar presentations you would like to see, things that you particularly like help with that relate to arts, disability, and education? Or if you know some really amazing presenters or you're an amazing presenter yourself, please send all that information my way because I would definitely appreciate it. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Cheri. This was a really fun and educational webinar, and I think everyone's going to be very excited to receive that handout and some new lesson plans they can use in their classroom.
Thank you.
So with that, I will say goodbye, and I hope you all will join us again next month. So goodbye, everyone.